You know, there is a very specific kind of electricity that hums through a stadium like Lord's right before a massive knockout game.
Oh, absolutely. It's palpable.
Right. You walk into that historic ground, you look around at the incredibly partisan crowd, and there's this expectation that you are about to witness something flawless, like a clean, perfectly engineered battle of titans.
Yeah, you expect a chess match, a scenario where every single move is calculated, every risk is meticulously mitigated, and, the outcome is ultimately decided by one moment of pure, visible genius on the pitch.
Exactly. It's supposed to be clean, but then you actually watch a knockout stakes clash in the women's T20 World Cup, and suddenly that neat little chessboard is just violently flipped over.
Total chaos.
Right. You're looking at a match landscape that is honestly beautiful chaos. And today, we are unpacking the anatomy of exactly that kind of
The
game.
one we've all been waiting for.
Yes, the monumental clash where Australia eliminated India to secure their spot in the semifinals. And we really have to dig into the mechanics of this deep dive because the box score alone completely masks the underlying psychological warfare we witnessed.
I mean, the box score is almost misleading, honestly. It tells you the destination, but it entirely ignores the brutal terrain those teams had to cross to get there,
Right. So, just so everyone is on the same page, here are the raw facts to anchor us. India put together a formidable, historic 170 for four.
which is massive.
It is. But Australia, in a chase that coaches will literally be using as clinic material for years, they hunted it down. They won by 6 wickets, scoring 172 for four.
And we really have to emphasize the tournament math here, for the listener. This wasn't just a tough day at the office.
No, the stakes were huge.
Exactly. With this result, Australia and South Africa advanced from Group A. They are heading to the Oval on Tuesday and Thursday to play the West Indies and England in the semifinals.
And on the flip side,
On the flip side, India is knocked out before the knockout stages for the second consecutive year.
okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand how India even managed to set that historic target of 170, we have to start at the beginning of their innings.
The power play.
Yeah, and honestly, watching that power play felt almost suffocating. You've got Shafali Verma and Smriti Montana opening, and they played it unusually safe.
Very cautious.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Isn't preserving your top order against a powerhouse like Australia exactly what you're taught to do in international cricket?
Well, in a vacuum, maybe. I mean, if you were playing a multi-day test match, absolutely.
Right.
But in T20 cricket, especially against an Australian side that just thrives on run rate pressure, safe is actually a very dangerous strategy.
Because you only have so much time.
Exactly. You are dealing with a finite resource, 20 overs. Preserving wickets is important, sure, but if you do it at the expense of early boundary scoring, you are digging a hole that gets exponentially harder to climb out of.
And Manhana really anchored herself, scoring a run-a-ball 38 off 37 deliveries. Watching it, she wasn't pushing the tempo at all.
Not even a little bit.
She was just waiting, picking off leg side boundaries only when the Australian bowlers actively strayed onto her paths. It wasn't until the fourth over that Shafali finally went after Gardner.
What's fascinating here is the statistical anomaly this risk-averse approach created. Australia actually failed to take a single wicket in a T20 international power play.
Wait, really? How often does that happen?
It's incredibly rare for them. It's only the second time that has happened since the 2023 World Cup semifinal. And ironically, that previous instance was against this exact same Indian team.
Wow, so India's strategy was basically do not give them an inch, do not let them see a weakness. But what exactly was Australia doing with the ball to make scoring so incredibly difficult?
That's the key question.
Because it wasn't just India refusing to swing, right?
Exactly no. You have to look at the pitch conditions and the Australian bowling mechanics. It was a slightly slower ground, meaning the ball wasn't coming onto the bat with a lot of pace.
Okay, so it's sticking a bit.
Right. And the Australian bowlers recognized this instantly and adapted. They started hitting these incredibly harsh, restrictive back-of-a-length deliveries.
And why is back of a length so tough on a slow pitch?
Well, when a bowler drops it short on a slow pitch, the batter can't just rely on the bowler's pace to deflect it for a boundary. They have to generate all the power themselves.
Oh, I see.
And that introduces a massive amount of risk if they misjudge the timing even slightly.
So by playing it safe against those harsh lengths, India built a foundation, but the scoring rate became completely sluggish. It's like holding your breath underwater to conserve oxygen, but suddenly realizing you still have to swim a mile.
Wow, that is a great way to put it.
Your lungs start burning, panic sets in, and instead of smooth, efficient swimming strokes, you just start thrashing. And in cricket, thrashing means losing your batting shape, swinging wildly, and ultimately losing your wicket.
That is the perfect way to describe dot ball pressure. It is a literal physiological response. The more balls you face without scoring, the tighter you grip the bat.
Your whole body tenses up.
Exactly. Your footwork gets heavy. The transition from preservation to forced aggression is what breaks teams.
And we saw that exact break in the ninth over. Shefali realizes they have to start swimming. She faces Gardner again, and this time she connects, scoring 12 runs in just a few balls.
But
then, Australian captain Sophie Molyneux stepped in. Shefali tries to cut loose, and Molyneux just completely deceives her. Clean bowled.
Molyneux is brilliant at this. I mean, it wasn't just a lucky delivery. She recognized the exact moment Shefali's patience had evaporated.
She could see the thrashing.
Right. She understood the batter was going to swing hard, so she targeted the stumps with absolute precision. It's tactical empathy, knowing exactly what your opponent is feeling and using it against them.
And the pressure just kept compounding from there. Let's talk about Jemima Rodriguez. She comes out and almost immediately hits this spectacular highlight reel inside-out boundary over the covers.
A beautiful shot.
Right. As a fan watching, you see that and think, okay, the momentum is finally shifting. But then she gets involved in a run-out that was just agonizing to watch.
The reverse sweep incident.
Yes, she plays a reverse sweep, and instead of looking at her partner or listening for the call, she is completely transfixed by the ball. She just ball watches.
Which is a cardinal sin.
Totally. Manhana is screaming for the runner to go back. It's just total confusion, and Manhana ends up getting sent packing for that 38 off 37.
Which perfectly illustrates your point about thrashing in the water.
Yeah.
That run out wasn't a result of Australian athletic brilliance.
No, not at all.
It was an unforced error born entirely out of the mounting scoreboard pressure. When the run rate is hovering just above 7 and over against Australia, your brain literally starts short-circuiting basic communication protocols.
So you're looking at a stalling innings.
Right.
You are stuck at 134 for 2. And this is after Molyneux had just bowled a masterclass 18th over, giving up 0 boundaries and just 7 runs.
The squeeze was well and truly on.
It was. India needed someone to basically disregard the physics and the math of the game at that point.
They needed a disruptor,
Mm-hmm.
and they absolutely got one in Harmanpreet Kaur.
They let out the Harmonster. I mean, how does a batter walk into a situation where the team has been suffocated for 18 overs against a bowling attack that has dialed in their lengths perfectly and just start dismantling them?
I fundamentally changed the geometry of the field.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when Harmanpreet came in, she didn't try to play conventional cricket shots to good deliveries. She attacked with this lethal combination of raw power and pinpoint placement.
Just bypassing the traps.
Exactly. She deliberately targeted areas of the field where the boundary riders were completely out of position.
And it visibly rattled the Australians.
Yeah.
You never see this, but the Australian fielding actually started to crack under her assault.
It's true. They looked uncharacteristically human.
She hits this massive draw to deep square leg, and the ball literally slips right through Georgia Wareham's hands and over the rope for a 6.
Which is an incredibly rare sight for that team.
Yeah.
But before we get to the final over, we have to talk about the tactical move India made during this blitz.
Oh, right, the retirement.
Yeah. They essentially retired Rodriguez, who was really struggling to find the boundary, and brought in the big hitter, Richa Ghosh.
See, I have to push back on this move. I mean, on one hand, it shows ruthless intent. But on the other, doesn't retiring a batter in international cricket send a terrible psychological message to the locker room?
It's definitely controversial.
It almost feels like a panic button to me.
It is a massive gamble, for sure, and it speaks to the desperation of the moment. But in modern T20 cricket, we just call this playing the matchups.
Just pure numbers.
Right. The coaching staff looked at the data and decided that Ghosh's raw power against death-over bowling was statistically more valuable than whatever Rodriguez was currently producing. It's brutal, it hurts egos, but it is purely analytical.
But the irony is, Ghosh just ended up standing at the non-striker's end. She had a front row ticket while Harmanpreet did all the heavy lifting.
She really did.
The stats from that final over belong in a museum. She hits 3 consecutive sixes, reaching a 25-ball half-century.
And let's put that in context for the listener.
hmm
That is the fastest half-century ever hit by an Indian player at the Women's T20 World Cup.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. She's on 56 off 27 balls. She goes for a third consecutive hit, rocketing the ball toward mid-off.
Pushing her luck.
Yeah, and it goes right through Phoebe Litchfield's hands, over her head, but Ellyse Perry is backing up and manages to secure the catch.
Incredible backup fielding.
But even with Harmanpreet gone, the adrenaline was just peaking. The very last ball of the innings, Deepti Sharma gets a top edge, and it sails over the rope for a 6, capping off a 23-run final over.
Giving India a total of 170, which is just a monumental achievement. That is the highest score ever recorded against Australia at a Women's T20 World Cup.
Which is mind-blowing, considering how they started.
Absolutely. They took a cautious, almost fearful innings and reverse-engineered it into a historic mountain of a total.
So you walk into the locker room at the innings break, you've just posted 170, the highest score ever against this team.
You have to feel invincible, right?
You do. You really do. But that invincibility lasts exactly until the first ball of the run chase.
Because it's Australia.
Exactly. Because setting a record against the Australian women's team often just provokes them to calculate exactly what is required to break one of their own.
So let's look at the start of that chase, because chasing a 171 is daunting, and you can see India's bowlers came out smelling blood in the water.
They were aggressive from ball one. Renuka Singh comes steaming in and traps Georgia Vole LBW immediately. And it was incredibly tense because the on-field umpire said not out, and India had to overturn it via a review.
That review was huge.
If they don't get that review right, the whole tone changes. Then Renuka and Shefali bowl these suffocating consecutive overs where they only give up a single run each.
Now, this was India attempting to replicate the exact same dot ball pressure they had just survived themselves. And for a moment, it worked.
It really did.
They forced a streak of 13 boundaryless balls.
But Australia doesn't thrash in the water. Beth Mooney steps up, reads the field, and hits 2 leg side boundaries off Renuka.
Just releasing the valve.
Yep. And then Phoebe Litchfield, returning from a 3-game injury absence, by the way, just announces her return by smashing a straight 6 in a 12-run Shefali over.
What a way to come back.
Right. Suddenly, despite that intense early pressure, Australia hits 49 in the power play.
And the difference in the power plays is just stark. India survived theirs. Australia actively managed theirs.
Yeah, that's a great distinction.
But the Indian spinners knew this pitch was holding up, and they struck back. Sri Charani, who has been phenomenal as India's top wicket-taker of the tournament, gets Litchfield to shank the ball to Mandhana at long off.
And then just 3 overs later, Deepti Sharma forces Mooney to sky 1.
Right, so the momentum shifts again.
Which brings us to what I think is the most fascinating part of the entire match, the critical juncture. We're down to the final 10 overs. Australia needs 99 runs.
A steep climb.
Very steep. A few overs go by, and the equation tightens. They need 86 runs from just 48 balls.
Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that specific equation approaching 2 runs a ball in a knockout scenario is the psychological breaking point for almost any team in world cricket.
Exactly. When you're watching that screen at home and you see 86 needed off 48, you have to wonder what is happening inside the batters' helmets.
It's chaos in there, usually.
Right. How much of the collapse we usually see from teams in this exact spot is a failure of physical skill versus pure, unadulterated psychological breakdown?
It is almost entirely psychological, which then triggers the physical breakdown. I mean, the physical skill required to hit a boundary doesn't just vanish into thin air.
The muscle memory is still there.
Right. What vanishes is the cognitive clarity to actually execute the shot. The adrenaline spikes, the heart rate hits 180, and the brain enters a full-on fight-or-flight state.
So they just panic.
Basically, yeah. When that happens, your fine motor skills deteriorate. You stop watching the ball out of the bowler's hand, and you start swinging at the memory of where the ball was.
Oh, wow.
That's why you see so many late swings and top edges in high-pressure run chases.
But India is standing there holding all the cards. They have the runs on the board, a roaring crowd, crucial wickets in hand. But they were about to face a masterclass in overriding that fight-or-flight response.
Enter Ellyse Perry and Gardner.
Exactly.
2 of the most seasoned, ice-cold players in the history of the sport.
Let's break down exactly how they shifted the momentum, because they didn't just swing harder. Radha comes on to bowl, and she makes a slight length error.
Just a tiny miscalculation.
Right. But Gardner doesn't overhit it. She precisely punishes it for a 4 and a 6 off consecutive deliveries. Ellyse Perry follows with a 4, boom, a 17 run over.
And this is exactly what we mean by calculating the chase. Radha's length error meant she bowled the ball slightly too full right into Gardner's hitting arc.
So she didn't need to force it?
Not at all. Gardner didn't have to generate the power, she just used the pace of the ball and the geometry of the field.
The follow-up punch in the next phase was even more devastating. Gardner decides to slog sweep Sri Charani for a massive 6. Perry hits another 4. That's a 16 run over.
It just kept coming.
In the blink of an eye, that suffocating 86 off 48 becomes a very manageable 46 off 30. But why did Gardner choose the slog sweep there?
Well, because the slog sweep specifically targets the deep mid-wicket boundary, which is often the longest boundary on the ground.
Okay, so it's a statement.
Exactly. By choosing that shot, she is telling the Indian captain, I don't care where you put your fielders, I can clear them. It's a physical assertion of dominance that just shatters the bowler's confidence.
And you could physically see that shattered confidence manifesting in the Indian squad. I mean, earlier in the game, India looked sharp, holding on to their catches.
They looked great early on.
But as Perry and Gardner systematically dismantled the required run rate, the physical reality mirrored the psychological state. You start seeing occasional misfields. The captain is making rushed, panicked bowling changes.
The thrashing in the water, just on the other side this time.
Exactly. While on the other side, Perry and Gardner are operating with cold, mathematical precision.
They aren't swinging for the fences every ball. They are identifying that the deep cover fielder is, 10 yards too square, and they're gently piercing that gap for 2 runs.
It's surgical.
It is death by 1,000 paper cuts, interspersed with these massive sledgehammer blows.
It was a final sprint of absolute dominance. Ellyse Perry scores this magnificent 56 off 33 balls, bringing up her 50 with a beautiful straight boundary.
Classic Barry.
And Gardner reaches her half-century off just 28 balls in the 18th over. They completely neutralized the threat of the Indian spinners who had been so lethal earlier.
By the time we reach the climax of this chase, the efficiency is just brutal. The equation is down to 34 runs needed off 24 balls. Renuka Singh comes in to bowl what needs to be a tight over for India to have any hope.
And Perry and Gardner just dismantle her. They take 17 runs off a single over.
Cut it right in half.
They literally chopped the required runs in half, dropping it to 17 off 18. And even though Perry eventually skied one to mid-off in the penultimate over, falling for 56, the damage was irreversible.
The game was already won.
Yeah. Georgia Wareham steps in, calm as you like, and scores the winning runs.
This raises an important question for the rest of the cricketing world, honestly.
Yeah.
How do you defend against a team that doesn't just hit big, but mathematically calculates their risks so perfectly?
I don't know if you can.
Right. They absorbed the hostility of an intensely partisan Indian crowd, they mapped the physics of the field, and they executed without a single spike in their heart rate.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive talking about the expectation of a clean, engineered match, and what we got was a historic roller coaster that defied traditional T20 logic.
It really did.
India played an undeniably incredible game. They set a record total entirely fueled by Harmanpreet Kaur's explosive 56 off 27. They did everything a textbook says you're supposed to do to win a cricket match.
But the textbook doesn't account for the Australian women's team. They answered with the highest successful run chase in women's T20 World Cup history.
171 runs.
171 runs, engineered by a partnership that absolutely refused to succumb to the psychology of the scoreboard.
It really is a masterclass.
It is a profound lesson in resilience for you listening at home, really. It shows that in high-stakes environments, momentum is often just an illusion created by the crowd.
Oh, that's a great point.
The team that ultimately wins is the one that stays analytical when the pressure peaks. It's about maintaining the cognitive clarity to find the gaps, instead of just swinging blindly at the problem.
I absolutely love that, maintaining cognitive clarity to find the gaps. And I want to leave you with a lingering thought to mull over today. Think back to that buzzing energy at Lord's we talked about at the start.
The expectation of greatness.
Right, the expectation of greatness. In this match, India achieved their absolute maximum. They set the highest score ever against this specific powerhouse team in this tournament. They literally played their historic best.
They really did.
So, what does it do to a team's psychology for the future when their historic absolute best is met by an opponent who simply looks up at the scoreboard, shrugs, and effortlessly rewrites the history books right back.
That is the incredibly heavy burden India has to carry into the offseason.
It truly is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an absolute blast unpacking the mechanics of this classic with you. Stay curious, keep finding those gaps in the field, and we will catch you next time.